Newsfile is brought to you in association with MTN, everywhere you go, and Bank of Africa, as strong as a group, as close as a partner.
Hello, a very good morning to you and welcome to Newsfile. I am Samson Ladi Ayenini. Now, the 30.5 billion cedi 2013 budget, hope versus austerity, in the midst of the huge deficit and threats to downgrade Ghana's credit ratings. But our fears Ghana is sliding back into HIPC justified. Blame Kweku Boche for all your water problems, E.T. Mensah seems to suggest as he shares reports of 4 committees recommending dismissal and prosecution of the acting MD for a multitude of sins, a case of witch hunt, or why is he still at post? Don't call me, don't call me, don't call me. But which rich NDC businessman wants to buy an unprofitable, debt-ridden Tema oil refinery? And Supreme Court stops payment of $1.3 million judgment debt to Isoferton. And guess what praise is being heaped on citizen vigilante Martin A.B.K. Amidu, the man who was mocked and vilified by the rented press for his rather revealing epistles about alleged rots in the belly of the whale that vomited him. I'm Samson Ladi Ayenini. Will be back with the best political team on radio, giving you the most authoritative analysis on this platform. This is Newsfile, putting Ghana first.
We have achieved these goals against the backdrop of the global financial crisis. We have also acted decisively to implement policies that address the challenges that occasionally confront our forward march. Mr. Speaker, as we are all aware, the global economy remained fragile in 2012, following 4 years of weak and uneven recovery, notably the persistent Eurozone debt crisis and the uncertainty surrounding the current fiscal issues in the United States. Therefore, Ghana's 2012 provisional growth rate of 7.1% in 7.1% is still high, given that it is on top of the growth rate of 14.4% recorded in 2011, when the GDP first reflected the impact of crude oil production in commercial quantities.
You're welcome back to the show. This is Newsfile. You're coming to you live from the Multi-TV studios. This is your Joy News channel, and you're also listening to us on Joy 99.7 FM, also on Love FM in Kumasi, and over a dozen of affiliate stations across the country. You are listening via the internet at myjoyonline.com and watching at multi-tv/streams. Your comments, your views, and questions are welcome. 1422 and 1760. Those are the text lines. Send us your messages and we will share them with the rest of the world. Newsfile, putting Ghana first. And this definitely is your most authoritative news analysis platform. My guests are just getting ready and going through the budget statement and various other documents that they have to help in the discussion. I'll introduce them shortly to you. This show is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of MTN, everywhere you go, and Bank of Africa, as strong as a group, as close as a partner. Now, a lot of issues have come up in the course of the week, but as you know, most prominent is the funding, is the budget. And we're asking the question, that the budget, the 2013 budget, hope or austerity. You've heard what the minority's verdict is on the budget, that it marks a journey to nowhere. That's according to Chairman Sabonso. You may also have heard Kweku Ajiman Menu, a former Deputy Finance Minister. Is that correct? Yes, he also saying that the budget is hollow and mere rhetoric. You've heard other people express doubts about a number of issues on the budget. So the funding appears is going to come from higher taxation. Government also has been accused of blowing 600 million Ghana cedis overspending in the 2012, year. Mahama Yarga has specific answers to that particular allegation. Where is the water going to come from? The electricity that we do not have now in the regular supply, the president or the budget tells us that the Millennium Compact, the money from there will be used to take care of that. We will look at the now, quote-unquote, sale of the Tema oil refinery. And I'm asking, the allegation is that it's being sold to rich NDC businessmen. But which businessman is interested in buying an unprofitable, debt-ridden entity like the TOR? And is that the only option available, really? And you also are aware that E.T. Mensah and Kweku Boche, acting MD of the Ghana Water Company, have been, engaged in some tussle in the midst of water rationing. It appears that all our problems in the water sector, according to E.T. Mensah, must be blamed on Kweku Boche. Well, Kweku Boche says E.T. Mensah is speaking, quote-unquote, nonsense. We will look at the praise that the man that was criticized, vilified, and mocked for his, approach to issues of corruption alleged in government. The praise that he's getting for the Supreme Court stopping the payment of 1.3 million Ghana cedis in judgment debts, dollars in judgment debts to Isofoton. Thank you very much for keeping your dials here on Joy 99.7 FM and also for watching this particular channel. I introduce to you my guest, Abdul Malik Kweku Bako Jr. He's a resident panelist and he's the managing editor of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Okay, Mahama Yarga is smiling at my introduction of resident panelist. Okay, so that is who he is really. And you know of Godwin Adawine. He is a law lecturer and a practitioner and also teaching actually at the University of Professional Studies, formerly Institute of Professional Studies. Mahama Ayaraga, he's also a lawyer. He is the Information and Media Relations Minister. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Nana Komia will represent the New Patriotic Party. He is here also in the studio. I'll introduce him to you shortly. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the show. All right. Okay, so first of all, we will talk about the budget, but I want us to take a listen to these excerpts from the budget.
We have achieved these goals against the backdrop of the global financial crisis. We have also acted decisively to implement policies that address the challenges that occasionally confront our forward march. Mr. Speaker, as we are all aware, the global economy remained fragile in 2012, following 4 years of weak and uneven recovery, notably the persistent Eurozone debt crisis and the uncertainty surrounding the current fiscal issues in the United States. Therefore, Ghana's 2012 provisional growth rate of 7.1% in 7.1% is still high, given that it is on top of the growth rate of 14.4% recorded in 2011, when the GDP first reflected the impact of crude oil production in commercial quantities. In contrast with the gloomy global picture, Ghana recorded relative economic stability and appreciable growth rates. Gross domestic product which was about 30 billion in 2008, expanded to 71.8 billion at the end of 2012. This testifies to the fact that output from all sectors of the Ghanaian economy, not just oil and gas, has grown in leaps and bounds. Mr. Speaker, the journey to attain macroeconomic stability over the past 4 years has not always been smooth, because we are still vulnerable to several external and domestic shocks. These require decisive and immediate corrective action at all times. During the first half of 2012, for example, the cedi came under intense speculative attack, but despite an election year, the Bank of Ghana and the Ministry of Finance implemented measures to stabilize the foreign exchange and reserve situations. The correction of economic threats is an obligation that we cannot compromise. We need to work harder than ever to consolidate the economic fundamentals that have been built over the years. Hence, over the past 3 years, the government has sought and secured considerable foreign grants and loans to rebuild worn-out roads, construct new ones, clinics, classrooms, teachers' accommodations, and other much-needed educational facilities, in addition to building hospitals. Unfortunately, a considerable proportion of these foreign resources remain in the disbursement pipeline, a situation that frustrates the process of closing the infrastructure gap. One of the key features of my tenure as Minister of Finance, therefore, will be the improvement of the slow disbursement process.
And that's the Honorable Finance Minister, Seth Terkper. Now, let's hear the fallouts. You heard the minority leader. Let's hear him now, and then we'll hear some other people and what they had to say about this budget.
Yeah, but I think, all told, that what we checked as the message on the true state of the nation has been vindicated. The cat is out of the bag. The cat is out.
Honorable minority leader, we are not debating the budget.
Mr. Speaker, I agree perfectly. We are not debating. And I agree that the debate will have to stand again for at least 3 days. Mr. Speaker, I'm not oblivious of that fact, but only to suggest that we are ever ready, even today, to debate this budget, marking a journey to nowhere, budget. Mr. Speaker, we are ready.
Honorable Deputy Majority
Leader.
All right, so Chairman Sabonsu, he is the minority leader in Parliament. Let's listen to Dr. Anthony Akotose, also of the minority, and Fifi Kwete of the majority. Okay, I understand that we are unable to bring you those accepts. That's all right. We'll move on to the discussion. And Nana Kumia, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, good to have you. Now, as you may be aware, we are talking about is it a 30.5 billion, cedi budget? And already a lot of issues are coming up. We've had complaints from development partners who have issues with the performance and effectiveness of the measures that have been announced to be taken to tackle the huge deficit that bedevils the country. Now, the development partners are complaining, among others, that the economic performance is poor and below expectation. I'll start with Mahama Ayarga. This is a budget, and the theme of the budget is sustaining the economic future, sustaining confidence in the future of the Ghanaian economy. It appears that your critics don't think that this budget is sufficient reflection on the theme.
Well, thank you very much. And let me also use this opportunity to thank your viewers and listeners. I believe since assuming office, this is the first time I'm appearing on this show.
That's correct.
And I was smiling when you introduced
Abdul Malik.
I want to add Alhaji so that I'll save him the cost of air ticket to Mecca.
I see.
Alhaji Abdul Malik as resident panelist. And just to say that I think that we need to rethink the way that we structure discussions around these issues.
Okay.
The effort sometimes to present it in a politically pitched way probably sometimes doesn't help the public and the right constituencies when they try to understand the issues that are being discussed. This is a budget. This is an economic policy instrument. There are various economic actors out there, and I think that going forward, we should try to structure these discussions in such a way that there's more of input from these constituencies than people who tend to view these things more from a certain political perspective and with a certain political lens. And I think that going forward, this approach would be very helpful. Now, on the specific issue of the budget and the direction and the criticisms, I think we take all the criticisms in good faith. I say so because in the budget itself, we have been very frank about the situation. We have not in any way hidden the fact that we have run a deficit. We have been frank to admit that a deficit is significant. We appreciate the fact that this, of course, has had implications for other sectors of the economy, especially the way that the deficit was paid for. We borrowed heavily from the domestic market to be able to pay for some of the deficit. And that had an impact on crowding out the private sector in terms of having access to money in the financial sector to be able to grow and expand the private sector, create jobs, and etc. So one thing that I would say is that we've been candid, we've been frank about the situation in which we found ourselves at the end of the year. But then we've also set out bold, in my opinion, measures that we believe will take us out of this situation. And the finance minister has outlined them. People may have doubt, but I think that at this stage, it will be good to give him the benefit of the doubt. What does he propose to do? One, we identify the sources of the deficit. It's largely, a function of the subsidies. We have indicated clearly that the subsidies have been a major source of the deficits. The subsidies are in so many areas. The one that really comes to mind when people are discussing subsidies is the one on petroleum products. Of course, that is the big ticket one. And before the withdrawal of some of the subsidies, there was a lot of discussion around subsidies. And the indications were that if we did not rethink the subsidies, we were likely this year to be burdened with another 2.4 billion Ghana cedis, as a function of trying to maintain subsidies at the levels that we maintain them. There are other areas of subsidies that people don't really advert their minds to. For instance, in the agricultural sector, we have maintained very high subsidies on fertilizer. The evidence is that perhaps half of those subsidies are benefiting people abroad because a lot of the fertilizer is smuggled out of the country. You find Ghana's fertilizer in as far as Cameroon I mean, people have made a business of enriching themselves out of the subsidies. There's been a lot of subsidies also in the educational sector. I was at the Ministry of Education, and I know that we had increased the subsidies to SHS students from 48 to about 64 Ghana cedis per SHS student. So those subsidies are also there. Then, of course, in the health sector, in the water sector, in the electricity sector, there are subsidies in almost every sector. And these are the subsidies that cumulatively led us to where we were. And every year, there's usually a review of these subsidies. But 2012, being an election year, there was really no review of almost any of the subsidies, both in the petroleum sectors. There was pressure to maintain the subsidies in the agricultural sector. There was pressure to maintain the subsidies in the water sector. There was pressure to maintain the subsidy in electricity. In almost every sector, there was pressure to maintain the subsidies at the same level without any upward, downward review. In fact, if there was any review, it was upward, increment in the subsidies. So subsidies collectively have been a major bane of our economic management. And in this policy statement, a minister has been forthright in saying that this is the problem and we need to deal with it. We've started trying to deal with it in the petroleum sectors. We would look at it in the agricultural sector, not as in withdrawing it, but in finding ways of ensuring that the subsidies actually get to. Because if the subsidies get to the farmers, we believe that we will be providing less subsidy, because if you take my district, Boku, and Upper East generally, and you take, let's say, Upper West, we were reviewing the figures in terms of fertilizer consumption. And we realized that if, in fact, all the fertilizer purportedly going to these two regions, Upper East and Upper West, if the fertilizer is actually applied to the crops, they'll be killing the crops and not really producing, foodstuff. So it just tells you.
If I may ask this question, the minister, in fact, did, enumerate where the problems are coming from.
I'm taking them one after the other.
Yeah, he spoke about shortfalls in corporate income tax.
I will go to those.
I'm coming to a point of an issue you raised.
Yes.
He indicated shortfalls in corporate income tax, notably from the petroleum sector, shortfall in grants from our development partners, implementation of the single spine salary structure, which is very huge, higher interest costs, utility and fuel subsidies, and higher spending on goods and services. And then he mentioned what you just said, one of the corrective measures that's already in motion. That is removing subsidies on petroleum. The question that is coming up is that when you do that, we know that if you increase the prices of petroleum products, it affects almost everything in the economy. And that may not improve the quality of life of the people.
That's another myth. It's not true. Indeed, when the discussion around the increment of petroleum products prices was taking place, there was engagement with the private sector, as in the transportation subsector. And they were clear in their minds that really, in their own pricing formula, the factor of petroleum as one that influences the price buildup is about 10%. It's about 10%. So it's really just a myth that when you increase petrol prices, that it affects everything. No, there are other factors that affect transport prices. And one of them, for instance, is actually the capital, the cost of the vehicle, the loan that they take to buy the vehicle, and then the financing of the loan. Many of the buses came through a number of private sector initiatives, and then they take it through GPRTU, ProTour, or other organization. Then they build in the interest rates on the loan facility that went into acquiring those buses. And so, having discussions with them, we realized that really it is the financing bit of it that is the greatest factor in terms of the pricing of fares. So the petrol factor is really a very small, percentage in terms of what influences prices. But let me get back to our frankness about the causes of the deficit, especially the single spine salary implementation. That is one policy that we remain very proud of. We remain committed to improving on the welfare of the public sector. In fact, as we speak, the last SNIT annual report that I saw, and I have a copy I think here, indicated that the public sector now pays far, far higher than the private sector. Of course, it has its implications also for the competitiveness of our private sector, globally, because the private sector will want to be competitive relative to other countries by being able to pay lower wages and therefore end up with competitive prices for their products so that they can export to other countries. But and also we need to increase the efficiency of the public sector, and that one of the issues that you needed to deal with was the pay structure and the remuneration package. But overall, we now have a better paying public sector, and we will work towards linking that to productivity. But the implementation of the single spine salary structure and the effort to pay huge sums of arrears within 1 year was
instead
a major,
of the original 5 years.
Instead of the original 5 years, was a major factor in terms of pushing the deficit to where it is. And in this budget statement, the minister has committed himself to going back to the 5-year plan. So that is a bold initiative aimed at solving the problem.
Okay.
Then we have indicated also that the subsidies that we have been implementing, which has become a source of enriching people who really don't deserve these subsidies, is going to be reviewed. And he started the review program. For instance, when he started increasing the tax thresholds for personal income taxes, it is part of the measures to redirect subsidies to where they actually ought to be going. So, for instance, he's increased the threshold from 1,400 to about 1,500 and a little more. And then he has also increased the exemptions, the benefits that will go to other things like liabilities arising from dependency, training, and etc. He's doubled all of them. In some of the cases, he has actually tripled the benefits that should go to. So if you start calculating, you take, for instance, the increment in the threshold from 1,004 to 1,005. Then you start deducting the benefit if you are for marriage, the benefit for old age, the benefit for dependency, the benefit for number of children going to school. By the time you really get to the taxable income, you will see that he is transferring huge sums of money from these subsidies that were not properly directed to forms of subsidies that go to people with low incomes, relative to those who have higher incomes. So there's a redirecting of the subsidies. Now, people have been talking about taxation as a way of dealing with this. That's a revenue mobilization. We believe that the way to deal with the problem, of course, is revenue mobilization. But what type of revenues are you looking at? We are looking at expanding the tax base. And we've been very clear in that. I've heard people saying that, oh, there's going to be tax increments and etc. There is nothing in the policy statement by the minister to indicate that he intends to increase taxes.
All right.
He has said that he is reviewing the administration of tax policy. So you are bringing all the institutions under one. You are simplifying the process of tax administration. You are making it easier for people to declare their taxes. Because most people want to pay taxes. They want to declare it. But if the process is so cumbersome, they would rather mind their business and already who wants to pay taxes. So he is simplifying the process. But most importantly, he wants to expand the tax base by bringing the largely informal sector into the formal sector. And that has to do with data. And that is why we also said that we're going to centralize data gathering, and all these multiple institutions that were involved in data collection and identification of citizens will all be centralized under one authority, and that is the National Identification Authority.
Okay.
And we believe that that will enable us to capture as much as possible those in the largely informal into the formal sector and expand the tax base. He talks about bringing to Parliament a number of proposals for tax review, but he hasn't said that the reviews are going to be upwards.
Okay, let me point you to this, for example. Yes. He talks about increase in VAT threshold.
Precisely.
That the VAT registration threshold, which is currently 90,000 Ghana cedis, will be increased to 120,000 Ghana cedis in fiscal year 2013.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Precisely. What it means is that from this year, if your business, has that threshold, that is the second figure.
That's 120,000.
120,000. What it means is that when you declare that, then you will now pay the appropriate VAT.
Okay.
But then, anything below that, he's going to introduce the flat rate. Is that okay? He's going to introduce the flat rate. Now, that is part of the strategy of expanding the base. Because when you do that, you will have a larger base for introducing a lower figure of the flat rate of 3% and in some cases 6%.
Okay.
And he believes that when you have that
explaining that there's a misconception that there's going to be tax hikes.
No, rather that is a benefit.
Okay.
On the contrary, that is a benefit.
Let's do it this way.
Yes.
I'll come to Nana Komia. I'll revert to you later because there are a few other issues that we'll need to look at. The question of the year 2012 in which you have double interest, rate, for example. The sectorial performances, will look at that briefly as well, and look specifically at the policy initiatives for water for schools, and also the MCA account for to solve the energy problems. Now, and again, you would have to make a pronouncement on the criticisms that have come.
Yes.
I refer to chairmen. You say you don't like that approach.
No, I'm ready
but
to
it's
do
something that
yes.
we'll deal with. I'll return to you and you deal with that.
Okay.
Chairmen are saying that this marks a journey to nowhere. Kwekwa Ajuman Menu saying that this is hollow. It's mere rhetoric. People like Kwesi Pratt saying that we are slipping back, into HIPIC and other, concerns as well. Nana, what's your take on this budget? It's supposed to give hope, but the minority thinks otherwise.
Well, thank you, Samson. Let me also wish your viewers and your listeners a good morning, and also my co-panelists.
Okay, if you can speak up a bit for me.
Now, I agree with all the criticisms against the budget. Really, somebody said it is the same thing, different. There is nothing new. There is nothing to inspire anybody behind a vision. And it's even more unforgivable, Samson, if you consider the resources that have been available to this government. In the last 4 years, this government has borrowed in excess of $8 billion. $8 billion in 4 years. It is the largest amount of borrowing by any government in that period. Away from that, this is the only government in the history of this country that has benefited from oil revenues. And in the last 2 years alone, 2011, 2012, not less than $1 billion accrued to the government from oil exploitation. And then you have the overspending of 12.1% of GDP, which is the highest deficit we have had since the Fourth Republic, of a deficit of 8.7 billion Ghana cedis. If you take it into dollar, that's over $4 billion overspending. So when you have all of these aggregates, these huge loans that we've taken, over $8 billion in just 4 years, you have over $1 billion coming into the government from oil, which no other government has ever had, and you have a deficit of over $4 billion. And you ask yourself, what has been the impact? As we speak, every Ghanaian is going through load shedding. Every Ghanaian is going through water rationing. Gas shortage has become normal in this country. They no more make the news. As I was coming this morning at Manet Court Junction, huge queue. Everybody's just passing by. It's become normal. No jobs. The unemployment situation is getting worse. Public services is getting worse. You can't get any public service unless you put something on the table. The sanitation, every aspect of our national life is getting worse. The real sectors, agriculture, is getting worse. If you look at the budget, the highlights of the budget, you take agriculture. In 2008, agriculture grew by 7.4%. Today that we have oil, agriculture grew by only 2.6%. If you break it down, disaggregate it, you go to crops. In 2008, crop production in this country was growing at 8.6%. Now it is growing at 5%. If you take livestock, in 2008, the livestock grew at 6%. Today it is growing at 5.5%. If you take fishing grew by 2.3%. In 2008, fishing grew by 17.3%. So a major real sector like agriculture, which employs nearly 50% of our people, it is falling. If you go to industry, I'm taking the highlights of the budget again. Industry last year grew by 7%. In 2008, industry grew by 15%. If you take electricity, it grew by 12% last year. In 2008, electricity grew by 19.3%. If you take construction, which also employs a large number, even though it's temporary, last year it grew by 11.8%. 3-4 years ago in 2008, construction grew by 38%. So, something. And if you take education, you take health, all of those sectors are falling. So you ask yourself, all of these loans that we've taken in 4 years, all this oil revenue that we have had, in all of these deficits, the overspending over revenue that we've had, why is it that every sector of our economy is getting worse? It's difficult to understand. And these are the figures. It's getting worse. Now, my brother Ayaga says we should be frank. They have been frank. But, I mean, what? Do you mean we should have expected less? We expect you to be frank. What are you talking about? That we should clap for you because you have been frank? The minimum we expect from you. But you see, it's not politics, but we've had ministers of state in this country saying to us that they wrote letters to World Bank and so on, and they didn't tell the truth. So maybe that's the standard that the Ayaga is worried about. But we expect you to be frank. So this business about you've been frank should not please come in at all. And you're telling us that the deficit is due to subsidies. There have always been subsidies in the Ghanaian economy. In 2008, when there was a deficit of less than 7%, what didn't the Ayaga and his collaborators, what didn't they say? It's reckless. Look at these people, huge deficits.
Colleagues, not collaborators.
Okay, I mean, you understand English better than I do. Colleagues. So Ayaga and his colleagues.
Collaborators is more conspiratorial.
Ayaga and his colleagues in the NDC. A deficit of about 6.6% in 2008. They said it was reckless. We had a real position of 2 billion Ghana cedis. They said it was profligate spending. They were standing on top of the radio stations. This is the worst government. Profligate spending, reckless deficits.
You are doing the same thing today.
And then, so we expected better.
So you are doing the same thing today.
No. We are, now that you are the masters, we expect better. And then we look at your record. Your deficit is 12.1%. Your arrears is not 2 billion that you said was profligate. Your arrears position is 5.4 billion Ghana cedis. 2 billion you said it was reckless, profligate. And you have arrears of 5.4. So how would you describe yourselves? Coming to tell us here that it's due to some subsidy. What subsidy? There's always been subsidies. And then they will tell you that, we have single-digit inflation. It's the longest in the history of Ghana.
That's fact, isn't it?
That's what they are saying. I haven't disputed them. But I'm looking at other facts, Samson.
Admit that one and go on to
So, I haven't disputed it.
Okay.
I'm just
reiterated.
reiterated.
Why not just saying, but that's also
I've just reiterated.
Yes.
But Samson, you look behind the boast. Single-digit inflation for 30, depending on who's speaking. So that 30 months or 2 years, 3 years, whatever. Fine. How do you explain that you have single-digit inflation of 9% or 8.8%, and you have treasury bill, which is the interest rate the government pays, at 23%?
I can explain that.
How are you going to explain it?
I can explain that.
How can you explain
I can explain
treasury bill rate, which is over 100% inflation rate? Why? Is the government a Father Christmas? Or the government doesn't believe in the inflation? And in the 6 months, according to the Bank of Ghana reports, December 2011, treasury bill rose from 10.7% to 22% in June. Just 6 months. And you still had inflation being single digit. How do you explain that? You see, and after all of this spending, they still have arrears of 5.4 billion Ghana cedis that they have to pay to Cocoa Board, to SNIT, to Get Fund, to Common Fund, to health insurance, to contractors, all over the place. After all these loans, after all this oil revenue, after all of this huge overspending, you still have arrears to Common Fund, health insurance. Yesterday, the health provider said we're going to shut the cardholders out. And then I heard the minister say, we will have your money by Monday. Look at it. The people they've been owed money for 6 months. And all of this huge overspending is going on. And if you look at the overspending the last three months of last year alone, that's the chunk of the overspending. That's where it came from. Where's the subsidy? What are you telling us about subsidy? You take growth rates, Samson. The growth rate is about 7.1. They expect it to go up to about 7.5 when all the statistics come because of the oil. The oil-producing country, Ghana, we're growing at 7.1, 7.5. When we didn't have oil in 2008, we were growing in excess of 8%. So how do you explain it? We've become a nation of shopkeepers because manufacturing is dying because there's no electricity. Everybody is on generator. The last time, multimedia, such a crucial media institution, had to go for hours because there was no power and your generator had run out. Can you imagine?
But when you say things like we've become a nation of shoppers, people are interested, shopkeepers, people are interested in knowing when we became a nation of shopkeepers.
It's getting worse. I gave you the figures for manufacturing. Didn't I give the figure? Let me give it to you again.
I've got them here.
Manufacturing, where's it? Where's manufacturing? Yeah, that is. Industry is falling. Industry grew by 7. 2008 it grew by 15. So it's falling. Agriculture is falling. It grew, so these are the real sectors that employ people. So if they are not growing, you have a problem. Because of this electricity crisis, people are laying off workers because they can't. They have to use generator and buy petrol, which has jumped up by 20%. So they're laying off workers. This is the reality in our situation. And you have all of these monies that have accrued to government. And what do we see? A deterioration in every aspect of our life. That is what you have.
Okay.
The huge deficit didn't go to capital expenditure. It went to recurrent. So you are not saying you are even generating investment that will repay. That's the situation that we have.
All right. Thank you very much. You just heard Nana Kumia, who is the Communications Director for the New Patriotic Party. You are watching and listening to Newsfile, your most authoritative platform, news analysis platform. Your text message is 1422 and 1760. You can also send me an email at newsfile@myjoyonline.com. I'll come quickly to you, Abdul Malik and Godwin, but I'll give you just a minute. Can you make that point you want to make immediately?
Very. One, he mentions figures, the percentage growth in the different sectors, and he tries to compare 2008 with 2012. What he doesn't, and he is not frank about, is that in 2008, the GDP was 30 billion. So it is a percentage of 30 billion. In 2012, Finance Minister gives us the GDP at over 71.8 billion. So even if you grew, let's say 5% of 30 billion, and I come and I'm growing 4% of 71 billion, I have done better than you. Is that okay? The figures are significantly higher. So it is important that in dealing with the figures, you advert your mind to the base. The base is now double more than the base of 2008. Okay. So that's the first thing. Lastly, on the issue of interest rates, you see, I'm not an economist, but my very basic understanding of interest rates and inflation is that the two are different economic policy instruments. The fact that you have a lower inflation rate doesn't necessarily mean that your interest rate, because interest rate is a function of how much money is available in the market to be borrowed. That's what interest rate is all about. Whilst inflation is the increment in prices over a period of time, and it depends on the basket, what items you put in the basket. So the attempt to create an impression that once we say that there is very stable, low inflationary rate, then there must be a corresponding lower or low interest rate. And that if that doesn't work, it means that our inflationary figures are useless and of no effect. That is not true. Okay. So the difference between the two instruments must be understood. All right. And if we had time, we'll go into that. But I think that Abdul Malik will speak. Okay. And then later on, when he gets to respond, we'll get back to the other issues. Nana, in a minute, how do you appreciate the explanation he just gave?
My brother, the information minister, has got it all wrong. You see, when we talk about growth,
he's talking about your selective, your decision to select 2008 for the comparisons.
But that's what I'm dealing with. My brother, when we talk of growth rate, you understand rate, it's a percentage. So it has nothing to do with your base. It is the rate. You are growing at a faster rate, you are growing at a slower rate. It's the rate, it's not the absolute. So please, don't box yourself into that. Now, number two, 30 billion Ghana cedis. When you say 30 billion Ghana cedis, you say 70 billion as the GDP. You have forgotten about inflation. You see, so use dollars. That will give us a better picture. Now, this business about Abiyaga flat trade, I forgot. Kaya, they are being taxed. They say they are going to spread the something. Spread it to where? The people selling trap here on the side.
I'm sure widening the tax net is a phrase that is a phrase that we have all.
Yeah, but why are you going to widen?
We have all been aware of since the government started giving budgets.
Who sleep on the streets every day? They pay 1 cedi.
Okay, thank you very much.
The trap here sellers who hawk trap here for the.
Okay, thank you.
They pay 1 cedi.
Thank you. I'll bring Abdul Malik. I'll bring Abdul Malik in here. Let's hear your analysis of the budgets. Hope or austerity? Both.
If one has to be fair, I think both elements are present.
You actually saw hope.
Yes, that's right.
Maybe he will show us.
Why are you trying to truncate?
I want to see
what appears to be an excellent delivery he's about to make.
No, I'm eager to see the hope.
Why?
Well, it's a matter of opinion.
I cannot wait to see the hope. So,
I think next I will bring you the glasses. Some type of glass will enable you to see hope.
It's a matter of opinion. When it comes to those things, there's a lot of subjectivism in those things. But in every budget, you would see positive and negatives, right from the Nkrumah days to today. And then, predictably, also, the reactions from opposition parties, are negative, generally speaking. Of course, when you go into the Hansard, and I'm talking here especially of constitutional regimes, you would see attempts by people across the divide to make meaningful contributions that help to advance, the course of the country in terms of its economic performance. So sometimes the platform rhetoric is distinguishable from, what really is captured in parliamentary business, where I think the real stuff takes place. Beyond the politicians, we have civil society groups and think tanks who also make very meaningful contributions, sometimes very critical and negative, but if you assess them carefully, they are attempts to improve on what the subject matter is. You see, for instance, and before I deal with the substance, this predictability or consistency of opposition reaction. I remember when the first budget, it was an interim budget, perhaps just like this one, was introduced by the Kufuor administration in 2001. If you go into Daily Graphic, March 10th, 2001, the headline is Budget Statement Half-Baked Minority. And I'll read a certain portion. The minority in Parliament has described the budget statement delivered to the House today by the Finance Minister, Mr. Yao Osafo-Mafu, as a half-baked document which should be rejected by Ghanaians. It noted that the fiscal policy lacked direction and therefore did not reflect the so-called positive change which the NPP government promised Ghanaians. The minority spokesman on finance, Mr. Moses Asaga, who addressed a press conference at Parliament House minutes after the budget had been presented, therefore called for fresh elections to determine whether the people will renew the mandate of the NPP or not. Quote, by this budget, we want the country to go back to the pools because the NPP government has deceived Ghanaians, who I am sure have realized that they do not have any future under this government, Mr. Saga said. Predictable. This was the interim budget by a government that was less than 100 days old. And we were being asked to return to the pools. Of course, constitutionally, that was not a sustainable proposition. Same thing with budget 2008. The minority described it as a killer budget, a budget of no hope to the ordinary people of Ghana with no new ideas.
2009.
And I bet you, go back to pre-2001. And particularly,
budget and all of
yes, indeed, the first budget by the NDC administration, NDC 1, you see, because it was a carryover from PNDC, that particular budget was a budget that the PNDC had crafted, and it was imposed. We were in the streets, we called it killer budget, and they sent some ACDR guys to come and whip us proper near Lido, the circle there. So we have had budget politics for a long time in our country. And politicians and those of us who perhaps are also too political, clearly in a very predictable fashion, will look for more of the negatives than the positives. But I'm saying that when it comes to parliamentary debate, the research I have done, I've noticed that they try to lessen the political rhetoric and come up with substance throughout the Fourth Republic. I've done that research, and I'm clear in my mind that that is what happens in Parliament, and that's good. Civil society groups have grown now. The Imani Ghanaians, the SIPers, and the IEAs and the rest, I think also bring in an input which is sometimes devoid of the partisanship. So I don't think we are doing that bad relative to discussing budgets. And I've made this somewhat lengthy submission to caution or to alert Ayaraga that the paneling is not a big deal. This is just one small aspect of the larger public discussion and interventions that go into these discussions. So he shouldn't worry when he sees people like us represented here. Now,
I'm not worried.
Well,
Just one improvement on.
Yes, but this is just one small aspect, and this station has many other programs.
Yes, that's a wide listenership. I mean, everybody every weekend.
I appreciate that.
People are busy during the week. Weekend is when they now relax.
I appreciate
and listen
that.
to us.
But if you listen to their Super Morning Show, they have such a broad segment.
Yes,
and
we've
bringing
actually
the
had
experts.
the minister himself on the Super Morning Show.
I think that generally everything is still in order. Now, I agree with some of the points Akomia made, looking at the negatives. And sometimes I wonder even how to rationalize them. I either itemized the causes and the factors that have led to the deficit. And I was going through some documents that the transition team, 2009, issued relative to the deficit that the NPP administration had left. I can tell you word for word, almost the same. In terms of the factors, the scale may be different in some terms, but the factors, okay, the subsidy, the regime of subsidies in water, electricity, you know, the shortfall in donor inflows, all the same. Yet,
the difference with those days is that we didn't have these huge loans and we didn't have oil.
I'm coming. That's why I started looking at the negatives first. But the factors, you see, the scope, I said different, but the factors
remain the same.
They remain the same, essentially.
It's very hard to redirect you towards negativity. Please ignore him. Speak. Let us see the positive aspects of the budget.
I'm proceeding step by step.
Tell him to stop. Stop trying to negatively influence Alhaji Malik.
Okay, gentlemen,
You know,
allow him to make his presentation.
No, they're the same. And what the feeling I have is this: it's about time we seek to depoliticize and demystify those factors.
Okay.
Because it appears that it's a vicious cycle, and that regardless of the color of a regime or a government, based on the kind of the character of our economy, the state of development, it appears we would always be challenged by some of those factors. Of course, the issue of quality of management and leadership is different. That could help to ameliorate some of those issues. But it's obvious to me that if we were all to try as much as possible and look at those factors in a very dispassionate manner, okay, very non-partisan manner, we may be able to forge a certain consensus as to how to handle those things, and also to avoid using them as political football for political advantage or political capital. Otherwise, I bet you, no government in the next 2 decades in this country will be free of this particular challenge. See, for instance, the SSS, the single spine
salary structure.
Good idea. Our friends, and I mean Ayaraga and his colleagues, come the campaign, highlighted that, okay, showed the percentage increase in wages and salaries. I thought they knew the effect of that. They should have known. If they didn't know, I'd be very alarmed. Honestly. But they looked at it from only one side. The positives that were accrued to them within the context of an election year. We are talking here of reckless election year expenditure, which the transition team used, and which I realized the donors are worried about. They didn't use the same adjective. But they are talking about the kind of overspending and expenditure that occurs during election years. It appears that the idea was, look, give out these salaries, give it out, let it go down well with the people, let them vote for us, we will deal with the problems later. What is the effect of that problem? It destabilizes the economy.
It doesn't really look like the workers are, completely satisfied even yet.
Yes, so why do propaganda with it? If it's a genuine economic policy, then let's not lament now. You see, we have to be honest with ourselves. So we need firm leadership. Okay, that's why I'm saying the quality of leadership and management is the other side where we can dissect and see which one is doing better than the others. But the fact is, the objective factors remain the same. The subjective factor, well, quality of leadership, the consciousness of the people, and the management skill you bring to bear, those are variables that will differ based on the kind of party, network, or leaders that you have. That's the way I see it. Otherwise, it's a vicious cycle. Look, you made a point about, you asked Akwame that question. And so I quickly went for this book that is almost faded, it's getting to serious trouble.
Looks like it's older than myself.
It might be, unless you were born after 82.
No.
But you see, the point about buying and selling, you made a point. You were asking when did it start. It was a good question. But it's a question that puts all of us to shame. In 1982, this is January 5th, 1982, when the so-called revolution had been launched by the predecessor entity of the NDC. This issue was brought up, under the Lima's administration, because he came and met a regime of shortages. He tried to cure that mischief by liberalizing trade. So goods and things that are coming from the Southeast Asian countries and China, quickly to fill the empty shops that the AFRC had left as a legacy. And in so doing, Lima was attacked that all he was doing was, instead of developing the productive sectors of the economy, he was rather filling the shops with goods and things. So Mr. Rawlings, in trying to inspire Ghanaians and tell us the way forward, you listen to what he said. He says, we believe that instead of putting our stake in the investment code's fundamental faith in foreign investment, we must put our trust in our own industrialists who are capable of building for us a strong industrial base. A nation does not become great from simply driving everyone into buying and selling. This is a real challenge we are posing to the Ghana Manufacturers Association. It is clearly the failure to encourage our own production in both industry and agriculture that has created the immense strains on our foreign exchange reserves and hence on our currency at home also. How many years ago? How many governments have we had? How many years have each of them had? What is the opportunity that they had to have cured this mischief? Today we are sitting here and we are asking ourselves, please make sure you don't turn this economy into a buying and selling one. 10 years of revolution, unchallenged, no parliamentary restraint, no media restraint, could not cure that mischief. 20-something years of constitutional democracy, 2 different parties have ruled Ghana. We're still here dealing with the same issues.
Let's hear from you now, Godwin. Now, I'm interested also in this aspect of it. You find that the criticism of the budget, on the budget, comes only from the opposition. Almost always. And we're reading this morning in the UK where the Office for Budget Responsibility, OBR, is criticizing David Cameron, on certain, comments that he's had to make about, public spending and other claims that he's had to make. Then they've looked at him in the eye and say, you're wrong. This is not correct. Do we see that it is possible that even this country will get to that point where even people within government will look at us in the face and say, look, we think that some things are not going right in these directions?
Well, you have to look at it from a number of perspectives. One, when those in government come to the realization that the people they govern are very much well informed and well assertive and empowered and will take nothing short of the truth, then they will act that way. But so long as those in government believe And so long as the generality of the people also do not show that assertiveness, then there is a fertile ground for those in government not to account properly. It is not a pleasurable thing to tell the public that you have failed. When so doing, you may put yourself in a very negative light, particularly in a very competitive political environment, knowing very well that your political opponents are waiting in the wings to jump onto the stage. So that is the basic issue. So I think that there is a need to empower the people. But interestingly, those who are to take the steps to adopt the measures and implement them to create the enabling environment that will get the people informed and assertive are the very people operating the state machinery. Question then is, how do you push them to open up? Since 1992 to date, you can see that there has been progress in the way of people fighting for certain basic freedoms. Freedoms that enable them to participate in government in a very informed manner. And you can also see that over the years, governance has been improving. If you look at it from the political aspect, people are very active now. People contribute actively if you look at the phone-in calls and then many programs. But what we need is the capacity to hold government in respect of the economic aspects, which is what I think the general public lacks the capacity now. But it is not a hopeless situation. I mean, people now know that the political freedom alone is not sufficient. You need the economic aspect to make your life completely okay. So you can see that people are building capacity, I mean, in those areas. So I think that over time, we'll come to that particular situation.
Does it give you hope when you hear the minister say, for example, that the Millennium Challenge accounts, you know, the monies that are going to come out of the Millennium Challenge account will be used to make Ghana self-sufficient in energy generation? We are presently, you know, bedeviled with this doomso, you know, thing.
I think this is not the first time that the expression self-sufficient has been used. I mean, in many other aspects. But if you want to find out whether we have become self-sufficient in respect of those areas that the expression has been used, the answer will be no. I do not think the problem is so much the lack of resources, any more than the management of those resources. So if we are supposed to be hopeful only because money is coming, without also at the same time being very much interested in how we will ensure that the money that will come will be applied prudently, then there will be no hope. If you even look at it from the very day of independence up to today, the management of our public resources has been very, very poor. A couple of months ago, the sole commissioner investigating this judgment debt issue, I mean, reports were made to the extent that people were paid money twice what, I mean, they were entitled to. And if you want to take just that alone as a case study of how we have managed our resources, it is frightening. And some even dare to say that we would not have had to ask other people to come and assist us if we were very prudent with whatever resources that we have been endowed with since independence. So I think that we should begin to get interested in finding out how resources are being managed. People are suffering as we speak. And therefore, when you talk about getting self-sufficient in the area of energy supply and generation, it doesn't sound pleasant to their ears. Because what they are going on currently, they would want to find out what can be done to address the realities that they are going through now. So if you ask them whether they are hopeful, I do not think that that will be a question they'll be interested, to deal with, any more than issues that will address the current situation that they are undergoing. But that is not to say that medium to long-term solutions to these problems is unimportant, but just to say that there are other critically important aspects that we have to address our minds to. Now, if you look at the response to the budget, and as Abdul Malik said, it has become standardized that you can always expect a group in opposition to use this approach and to use this language, even if in a different shade. But at the same time, the reality has always been the same. The same circumstances, the same factors, the same challenges that each group has had to deal with. Interestingly, the two groups that have dominated our political landscape since 1992 have each had not less than 2 terms. And in each term, they have had to face the same situation. Can we not grow out of this and then say that from our respective substantial experience, I think we now have to begin to relook at the way we address these issues. So long as the political class will not agree on matters that should be treated national, the rest of us cannot, think that wise. So the economic agents who are operating wherever they are taking clue from what the political leaders are doing. So each one is also trying to make his or her corner very comfortable. Nobody is ready to accept that this is a national issue. We should sacrifice today so that in the near future we shall all benefit from. So I think that we need to begin to rethink the way that we, as it were, criticize some of the ways we handle national issues. You shouldn't expect praises, but at least let's expect that there should be sincerity, at least for the sake of the advancement of the society.
Thank you very much, Godwin. You are listening and watching Newsfile on Joy 99.7 FM and on your multi-TV. This is your Joy News channel. I've got some of your messages here coming through 1422 and 1760, as well as our email, newsfile@myjoyonline.com, and also through our Facebook page. This one from Alexa Kofo. He says that I agree perfectly with the minority leader's comments. This is indeed a budget to nowhere. What is the essence of preparing a budget if the government always spends monies beyond what has been budgeted without justifiable reasons? MacDonald Bruce in Akosombo writes, the NDC government has nothing to offer this country. I was sad when I read on Joy News that the various diplomatic missions told the president that they are disappointed in the state of the Ghanaian economy. But you were also expecting to see Fifi Kwete on this platform explain the deficit. I'm sure you have been listening to Mahama Yarga explaining it to you. Cyril in Accra writes, it's funny how Mahama Yarga is now shifting the goalpost as far as petrol increases is concerned. We all live in Ghana and know how petrol increases affect everything. That is the single most important factor as far as prices of foodstuff is concerned. Also, all the tax institutions are now under GRA. So what streamlining again is Mahama Ayarga talking about? Let's be honest with Ghanaians and tell them there will be an increase in taxes. Now, Stephen Kwesi Echampong, right from the United States of America, and he says that it is sad Kwame Nkrumah's Ghana is now dead since his demise due to visionless leaders who followed Osagyefos. Okay, I think you wanted to write something. It didn't come out clearly. Ghana has been grounded to a halt. Nothing is working because of selfish leaders who only think about themselves and their families. God help Ghana. Charles Nyam writes, the budget did not address the issue of unemployment. There's no future for the youth of this country. Ask Yesdek if they have stopped paying salaries of their workers, and NHIS if they have stopped operating. And Cyril Dakwa writes, if it has been confirmed that over the last 4 years, this government has borrowed and spent more than budgeted, I expect to see more revenue-generating ventures and industries springing up. Over the past couple of years, the service industry has overtaken the manufacturing industry, which shouldn't be the case if the borrowed money was channeled into productive ventures. I am thinking this money was spent on the NDC's electioneering campaign. Simple. Now, I return to you, Mahama, and ask of your verdict on the opposition's verdict on the budget and the development partners and their concerns, and also particularly the concern that rating agency Fitch, will downgrade this country's, credit ratings. And there's a question here that this gentleman put. I think you can look at it also. He's saying that the budget did not address the issue of unemployment.
Thank you very much. I will respond briefly to a couple of issues and then deal with the issue that you have just raised. I do agree with Mr. Kwekubako that the critical issue now and the greatest challenge now is leadership. I do agree entirely with him. But that is precisely what President John Dramani Mahama is going to offer. And the starting point in the offer of that leadership is being frank about the situation in which we find ourselves. Because unless we are frank and open about our current reality, and then to now provide opportunities for every Ghanaian who wants to constructively engage in defining the path to addressing those problems, leadership will definitely fail. So we are moving away. We are moving away from propaganda. We are moving away from propaganda, and I think that you have to help in that regard, especially my predecessor, Minister of Information. I think that is one critical factor. John Mahama will provide leadership and constructive leadership that will take us out of this situation. You see, I had a discussion a few days with a colleague on the other side of the political divide on this budget. It turned out that, in fact, he had even read the budget when we were discussing the budget. And halfway through the program, he admitted he hadn't read the budget. He just saw the highlights. I'm not talking about you. Is that okay? I'm not talking about you. You see, the truth of the truth of the matter is that whilst we're sitting, he asked me for a copy of the budget. And I've offered that there are some in my car. I'll give him copies. Is that okay? But I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about somebody else in the same political grouping who was busy discussing a budget that he hadn't read. Now, when you read this budget, there are two parts. There's a first part of it that really looks at our performance in 2012 and looks at the challenges, and then also spells out in substantial detail the measures that we are taking to get ourselves out of that challenge.
The outlook.
Now, there is a second part of it that recognizes structurally what has always been a problem, and then also outlines measures to address those structural challenges. And I think that it is very important for everybody to try and then read that part of the budget. And that is Section 8, which looks at structural reforms of our economy. You see, this is an economy that is moving from lower middle income to full middle income. First and foremost, the financing of development is changing. We are no longer going to be able to access concessional loans and grants from development partners. Basically, we are on our own now. We have to go to the financial market, international financial markets, and look for money. That money is costly. It's not as cheap as the money that we could obtain from loans and grants.
May I remind you that you have to be fast about it, because
yes.
in this round, as we speak, you have just about 3 minutes to finish your delivery.
Yes. So there are structural reforms that will deal long-term with the issues that Kwaku Baako has mentioned, the issues that Godwin has mentioned, and the issues that I think in your text messages that you've read, they have also identified as structural things. Now, there are major issues about developing the private sector. And in these structural reforms that we have enumerated, we have set out clear programs to deal with these issues. One is that we agree there's an infrastructure deficit of $1.5 million per annum. Energy alone, consumption of energy, is increasing by 10% on an annual basis. And so you need to match that with a corresponding increment in the provision of infrastructure for the generation of power, and then the distribution of the power, and then the efficient management of that power. The same applies to power, water. The same applies to road infrastructure, air transport. We're dealing with, healthcare delivery infrastructure. We're dealing with infrastructure for education. We are having a major challenge in terms of infrastructure. And the financing of it, since we're moving away from concessional loans and etc., has to come from the international financial market. And the finance minister has outlined a program to deal with that. He says that we're going to engage in an aggressive PPP, inviting the private sector so that we can re-engineer the financing program for these major infrastructure programs that we need in order to make our private sector competitive. Somebody talks about jobs. Jobs will be created by the private sector. But like you said, and he mentioned earlier on, the private sector will have to have us address the issues of infrastructure and inputs into production. And those ones were there. For instance, in the energy, we mentioned in the budget that the Compact 2 of the MDA is going to be dedicated or devoted to addressing the energy challenge. So that is going to happen. Very soon, we'll be resolving this energy issue in a way that, beyond domestic use, commercial enterprises also have reliable, efficient supply of energy at affordable prices. When we finish our gas infrastructure development and we begin to use gas to generate energy, it is definitely going to drive down prices, and therefore our industry will also become competitive. These are medium-term things that will happen, and they are happening. The gas pipeline is almost completed, so work is going on. The roads in the Eastern Corridor and the Western Corridor that we have indicated, we're working very hard. These are major agricultural centers that need to be opened up. In the past, one of the problems that has discouraged people from going into agriculture is that you produce and you don't have access to the market. Half of your produce gets rotten. And that whole area from Volta region up to Boku, very fertile for agricultural purposes. And yet no major road networks to be able to access markets, even for exports, yam and etc. That is why the Eastern Corridor Road becomes very critical, and then the Western Corridor Road also becomes very critical for us to be able to grow both agriculture and the private sector. So these are programs that are in place. These are infrastructure things that are happening, and these are sometimes some of the causes of the deficits. So I can assure you that when you speak of direction, there is a clear direction that President John Dramani Mahama is taking us.
Thank you very much.
And I think that it is important that if you don't mind, I can step out and bring you a copy of the budget. You can study it closely subsequently.
Nana Kumia, what critics also say is that what the minority does is simply to criticize, and you end there. That this country belongs to all of us. In fact, for the majority of us, the greater majority of us, this is our only country. So if we are all interested in making sure that this country is on a sound footing, don't only stop at criticizing. And Bernard Mona had the opportunity to say in Parliament after the budget presentation that it is shameful that the minority leader made the criticisms that he did, because what the MPP did going into the House and debating the budget was a contradiction because of your earlier position to stay out of anything that will outlive the president, as it were.
I wouldn't worry myself if Bernard Mona at this stage. He's not here. But you see, my brother, the Minister for Information, made some interesting points. The point, and I agree entirely, is leadership. Because all of these things that he has mentioned, structural reforms of the medium-term agenda, sustaining confidence in the future of the government.
I can give you this budget.
No, hold on a second. You see, something. In every single budget in this country, you would have structural reforms of the medium-term agenda, sustaining confidence in the future of the government.
So you admit that you haven't read this one.
In every budget.
Just admit that you haven't read this one.
So, you see something?
Please.
These are real issues that affect the livelihood of our people.
Yeah,
you see, look at this budget. How many pages? Maybe 800 pages, I don't know. The last budget, the budget before that one, the 2009 budget, all of them, all the ideas are there. We would borrow from the open market. Well, we went to the open market in 2006 to borrow from the open market. When we became a middle-income country, a lot of the concessional things were going to dry off. And we have good credit rating. Today, as we speak, your credit rating is being downgraded. So even your ability to go to the open market is getting into doubt. Structural reforms, it's always in every budget. You are going to do PPP for road, and it's a new agenda. It's always been there.
He's talking about the focus.
It's leadership. You see, look, John Mahama is our friend. I wish him well. If he succeeds, all of us succeed. But the reality is that John Mahama is not entirely a new entity. A lot of these deficits that we're talking about, that all of us are crying about, happened in the last 3 months of last year. The figures are there in the Bank of Ghana report. John Mahama has been head of the economic management team for 3 years. So it's not an entirely new entity that we are coming to tell us there's some new hope that we haven't seen before.
It's a new mandate.
Well, look, now it says it's mandate.
It's a new mandate.
You had a mandate in two.
And it comes with
you had
agenda.
But you see, when you say that, you unnecessarily even downgrade the predecessor.
No, I'm not.
What do you mean new mandate? Mills didn't have a new mandate in 2009. The NDC didn't have a new mandate in 2009.
He fixed the economy. From
so
then,
please
remember
please.
that Nana Akufo-Addo said he should fix it. He fixed it. There were challenges towards the end.
The economy that is running at record deficit, that is running at record borrowing, that has oil revenue that we can't see anything, that is the fixing. That this is the best you have. So, my brother, it is leadership. Because everything is effect. What causes the society to move is leadership. When you have corruption of the kind that we have seen, I come to tell us about structural problems. Look at what I have here. When you have a situation where government gives a contract for 72,000 cedis in November 2009, and then just a year after, the same government gives the same contract in January 2012. Between November.
What documents are these?
No, these are contract documents from district assemblies. Now, who to senior district assembly? They gave a contract. Can I finish? 72,000 cedis for a 6-classroom block in November 2009. Then in January 2012, 1 year, 2 months or so, the same 6-classroom block was for 325,000. This is the reason why you cannot get money. This place. This is the reason why you cannot get money to generate electricity. Oh no, get a document. I don't have a problem. You see, this is the reason why. When you have the kind of judgment debts, we are so quick to pay debts. We will go and what's the name? The ACAS. You go and cancel a contract that has been ratified by Parliament. You have to pay the person $30 million.
The challenge is
and now you don't
do more than criticizing and provide alternatives.
But you have to lay the basis. I'm saying that corruption.
Alleged corruption, you mean?
No, this is not alleged corruption. I've shown you the documents. I'm saying that we cancel a contract. Somebody has spent 30 million to do us. He hasn't got anything. We say, no, go away. So it's okay, pay me back the money I've spent. We pay him 30 million. And since then, we haven't got anybody to go and do the exploration. It's money that has gone to waste. $30 million. You know the amount of roads he could have done in Teshi and Nungwa? So people can generate economic activities. Do you know? You see, so we're talking about basic things. Well, if you read the Minority Leader's True State of the Nation address, it's a gem of information about alternatives that have to be there. But at the end of the day, you may have all the plans. If you don't have a leadership that is going to cut through, look around us. Street lights don't work. Street lights, they don't work. Today they are on, tomorrow they are off. We don't have a system that can ensure that street lights work all the time. Go to Asalam Down, just here. Structures wrongly sited at wrong intersections, causing commotion, traffic, adding on to cost. And you have all kinds of officials at the sub-metro level. You have director, you have assemblymen, you have planning director, everybody working about doing nothing. You have at the center the AMA itself. And all of these things are going on, adding on to cost. People park wrongly in the business areas, causing traffic. And the ordinary citizen is frustrated. Everything is there in the budget, in there, wherever. But it's the leadership. And I'm saying that John, hey, he's our friend. All of us wish him well. But he's not a new entity. You have to show us how you are going to be different. And when you look at the budget, there's nothing in it.
I see. Thank you very much. Abdul Malik is going through some of the documents still, and I want to hear from you your very final comments on the budget.
Before he steps on, stop. I think what my colleague has done is he has prepared standard responses.
I see.
Like we said, even without reading the budget, he knows that there's nothing in it.
Okay. Abdul Malik, let's hear you.
I'm giving you hard figures. You say I haven't read the budget. I'm getting the figures from the budget. If I haven't read it, how am I getting my figures from? And you can't challenge me.
Okay, gentlemen, let's hear Abdul Malik.
And let me also mention to you something, that the major determinant of interest rate is inflation. This business that Ayariga is doing, you should never go and repeat it. The major determinant of interest rate is inflation.
I'm telling you.
What is interest rate?
I'm telling you.
Master, I go and put, hold on, I go and put 100 cedis at the bank.
Yes.
Inflation is 10%. So I'm telling the bank, you must give me interest of 10%, so my money doesn't lose value. Then the bank will add a little something for profit, for trading with my money, 2-3%. That is what happens everywhere. In fact, if you are...
That's savings rate. First, I think what you're talking about is savings rate.
No.
That's savings rate.
So, let me explain. So, if I put my money in the bank...
That's savings rate.
One second, let me explain. It's a very simple matter. There's no need to fight. If I put 100 cedis in the bank, I'll tell the bank will have to give me 9% interest because... inflation, just to make sure the value of my money stays. Then for keeping my money, they add 2 or 3%. You understand? So if inflation is 9%, I expect the bank to give me 12%, 9% to cover the value of the money, and then 2-3% for profit. In that case, when I'm also going to borrow from the bank, I expect that after the bank has paid me 12%, they also put on some 5% or 4%. But if the bank is putting on, government itself is paying.
Let's hear more than
100% the rate of inflation.
Since it's brought us back to that subject.
Briefly.
I agree with you, for instance, that if I put my money in the bank, I may not want the value of my money to depreciate beyond the inflation levels. And then the bank may add something. That's savings rate. When
I'm going to borrow.
When we are now going to borrow, and there are 100 of us looking for the same money, and the banker is a businessman, and he is going to determine the price of the money based on the demand in the market, he can go higher depending on the pressure on him to lend. So the interest rate, the one that you are citing, that one is largely a function of supply. Is that not why you are arguing? Is that not why you are arguing that because government is borrowing too much from the domestic market, it is crowding out the private sector? That's because they have a reliable borrower and they know this person will pay government, and you, a private person, you may come and then they will have to declare some of the debt as bad debts because the business has gone bust and etc. And so it is a function of the demand and supply of market of money that partly determines the interest rate.
Thank you.
The savings
Thank
rate,
you.
I agree with you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Now, let's hear briefly from Abdul Malik and then Godwin. And then we'll move on to the next subject. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
See, with regards to the MCA, the energy thing, I'm not sure that it is the first time I'm hearing this. Because I think right from the word go, when we became eligible for the second thing, it was declared mutually between the two parties involved in that exercise that will be targeted to energy. Okay. So it's not a question of the budget having brought up any innovation, but being consistent with what initially had been agreed upon. And you see, my brother Ayariga made a point about the gas infrastructure will be ready soon. I pray that it's ready soon. That thing should have been ready long ago, based on the program that was in place. And indeed, the former energy minister, in an interview with David Ampoff on Time with David, acknowledged that they inherited a plan, a program, that the previous government had decided that that thing should be on a fast-track basis. And the Jubilee partners and all the rest were prepared to assist, facilitate. Somehow I believe, and the government is entitled to that choice or that option because of the Chinese connection, because we thought we wanted to bring it within the context of the 3 billion thing for a consolidated approach. Government is entitled to do so, such changes. But that led to some delay. So, and it has affected us in terms of present energy, the precarious energy situation we are faced with. The same to do with a certain project in Tema. I've forgotten the name, but Zakem were handling it. If you recall, in the 2009, all sorts of allegations were made, including the one made by Craig Murray, you know, and that led to all sorts of problems with that project. That project was about 40% complete by the time the Mills administration assumed office. I'm told it's still being done, this time by VRA or so. Sometimes, you see, too much politicking, and I mean negative politicking, looking for a ghost where one does not exist, lead to problems with economic projects. And I'm not saying it's peculiar to this particular government. It's cut across our political history, and it has an impact on our economic performance. You know, structural reforms and those things, I agree with Akomia, have been present in all the budgets. Look, you know, it got to a stage, we even wean ourselves off the IMF in a certain way, not entirely, but we're able to get ourselves...
President Kufuor announced it.
Yes, this was a fact if you looked at the statistics in terms of budgetary input from them, you know, and then it enabled us also to go on the international finance market. The Eurobond was an evidence of that. We're, I think, the second country in Africa, after South Africa, to do that. So we were progressing in that direction, but somehow the economic challenges that confronted us in 2008 and 9 led to government again deciding to go back to the IMF, if you recall. And that was like a reversal of that policy. Now we are being told we go back there. You see, this cyclical thing, it worries me. Okay? Governments can come and go. We should be able to maintain a certain stability and consistency with how we manage our economy. But I said, bottom line is the quality of leadership, the quality of management that we bring to bear on our socio-economic activities that will make a difference.
Gordon.
Well, the budget is a key instrument of government economic policy. I mean, it is through the budget that government is able to implement those policies that it is convinced will result in, let's say, improvement in the lives of the people. But you see, we have had numerous and varied interventions in various specific areas of the economy over time. I do not know if we have conducted sufficient deep audit of how far those interventions have taken us and what lessons we can draw from that and what new packages we can have. If you look at all those areas that we have had the interventions, they still have problems. And unless we are able to deal with those things, the issue of unemployment can never go. You see, if you are growing the economy, I mean, some argue you need to package the strategies in a way that you target those who are really in distress and in need of assistance. You don't do it in a way that is in the form of charity or is in the form of aid, but they need to develop their freedom, their capacity, so that they can then take their destiny into their own hands. So in using the budget to solve the unemployment problem, I suppose, I mean, those are the ideas that, I mean, may have informed the content of the budget as it is. But unless we do that, we'll always have to be dealing with this issue of unemployment. Because if you target areas that really do not need much of the assistance and then leave out the areas that need assistance, then those areas not receiving the assistance will forever remain where they are. But the issue of unemployment too must not be looked at only from the perspective of university graduate unemployment, because we have other stages where people graduate. So where do we place them? Do we have them in mind when we talk about this issue of unemployment? And I think it's an area that we need to address if you really want to address that particular issue. So those are the issues I have.
All right, we'll return shortly to look at the confusion at the Ghana Water Company and TOR, quote unquote, on sale. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, putting Ghana first. And my guests in the studio, Abdul Malik Kubako Jr., Godwin Adalwine, Nana Akomia, and Mahama Ayariga. Now, some of your messages coming in now from Kweku Safo Adai. He says, Samson, the budget details reveal the deteriorating nature of our monetary system under the NDC surveillance. I am not surprised. Adomako Abraham writes from Nkranza, I think it is too early for people to throw these criticisms and complaints at the government. Have they forgotten that, 1, swearing in was just January 7, 2013. 2, it is crucial to plan something before implementation. 3, even the first 100 days is not or have not been exhausted. Or at what pace do they expect the economy of a country like Ghana to grow? Thank you very much. Kojo in UK writes, NPP, NDC, all other parties should together form a body to help deal with the water, electricity, and unemployment. James Amankra writes, all that is happening in Ghana now should be blamed on Dr. Kojo Afarijan for giving the verdict of Ghanaians to the wrong person. If someone does not deserve to rule and is forcefully crowned to rule, he will never succeed. So President Mahama should revise his notes. Dr. Yao Ohiming in Manchester in the UK writes, there are massive problems with our nation that the political classes are not admitting. We are over-reliant on raw material resources and we derive very nominal from personal taxation. We borrow not to invest, but to fund recurrent expenditure. With this picture, we are really on a road to nowhere. If the government is really serious, they will start by slimming down public expenditure, by trimming the public service of all the several appointees and hangers-on. It should resolve never to borrow to consume. Never to borrow to consume. They should let Ghanaians know the investments they are making in the economy, how much it is costing us, and the returns that will accrue to pay for the loans and over what time horizon. Our budgets are not transparent on these aspects. Thank you very much for your messages. Newsfile is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and as close as a partner, as well as Star Assurance, your solid partner. And we'll move on to the next subject that I introduced to you earlier. We are looking at TOR, the Tema Oil Refinery. We understand that it's now going on sale. So the bell is ringing. If you have cash, rush, or you'll be bailed out on TOR. Now, we are aware also that there were initial, information about TOR, the likelihood of TOR being privatized, and these, news being denied here and there, including people like the TOR boss himself. We've heard the MPA boss suggest that TOR ought to be privatized if it has to be efficient and effective. And now we have heard Rashid Pelpo also come to suggest that that is the way forward. What is happening? I start with you again, Mahama Yaga.
Well, it's appropriate to start with me. I have no problem. Just that whilst we're here, I got a text from the communications director from VRA trying to correct the discussions regarding the KTPP Alstron project and said it never started. It just started, I think, last year. And so the indication that it was 40% done in 2009 when we took over, he says, is inaccurate. Just to correct that, you can cross-check also.
Which one
later.
is the KTPP? Which one?
I think it's in Tema.
No,
I think the Pong project is what you're yes.
Zakem?
It's in Pong.
Zakem?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes, that is
Zakem,
it.
remember?
Well, this is the text message from the communication director from VRA.
Zakem, you remember the controversy in 2009?
This is from the communication director of
VRA. Over Zakem in 2009. Kweko is right.
VRA.
They had brought the equipment, they had built the wall they were about to install. It was about 40% complete. Kweko is right.
This is what the communication director from VRA said, that the KTPP Alstrom project in Pong is not, the Koko Bako's position is not accurate. The project was not 40% complete. Some materials had been brought in, the land had been acquired, but project construction never started until late last year.
So it was
what
percentage?
So he didn't indicate the percentage, but that statement that 40% completed
so
was not
let's
accurate.
go to TOR. This is what the finance minister has to say about TOR. He says that in our quest to find a lasting solution to the perennial financial challenges of TOR, a technical, operational and financial diagnostic review was commissioned. The audit has been completed and the recommendations, including maintaining the timely implementation of price adjustment arrangements, are being implemented to ensure that TOR operates efficiently on a financially sound basis well into the future and thus bring to a close the TOR debt phenomenon. In the process, the recapitalization of TOR will be an important requirement and various options are being considered for this purpose. We are aware that initially government had voted 30 million towards TOR, and then we knew also that there was supposed to be an additional 37 million or so. Then suddenly we are being told that the best way forward is to auction it to the highest bidder.
Nobody has said that TOR is going to be auctioned to the highest bidder. Nobody. In fact, His Excellency the President, in the State of the Nation address, said, and I want to quote him, Mr. Speaker, this year we will start a restructuring of TOR to restore it to its former glory as the most efficient refinery on the west coast of Africa. We will carry this out with strategic partners who are willing to invest in a PPP with the government of Ghana. That is what the President himself said. And this is on the back of work that has been ongoing to restructure TOR, both in terms of engineering, development of infrastructure and etc., correcting the losses level based on some challenges with efficiency. And I think that the idea is that we cannot afford to continue the situation where government invests in toll, and then later on we find out that debts have been piled up, and then government again has to go and then bail it out, and then there are inefficiencies and there are challenges. I'm not saying that currently there are inefficiencies, but then historically it's been the pattern. And we also know that in the West Coast, it is one of the major refineries, and also it has a great potential. We are becoming an oil-producing economy, and this even further improves the potential and the strategic importance of toll. And in a situation like that, you are looking to expanding. I keep hearing people say, oh, but if toll is there, why do we import crude oil? The fact of the matter, finished products. The fact of the matter is that even if toll produces at full capacity, toll will not be able to meet the demand of the Ghanaian economy.
But it will meet a percentage, I understand, up to about 60 or 40?
About 40%. So the issue is that you need to even expand the capacity. That requires significant investment. And one of the problems clearly has been one of management. There's no doubt about that. I mean, we've changed MDs over the years. Management and workers have had problems over the years. Engineers have left, for greener pastures, and it's difficult retaining the best engineers, and etc. Operating at full capacity and consistently over a period of time has been a problem. There's so many other issues that have to do with management. And that is why the President said, we will invest at least to make it, solve the major problems confronting it now. But going forward and making it a strategic, refinery in the West Coast, we will need strategic partners who have both money, engineering know-how, and managerial capacity, so that we can partner with them.
That's where some people have problem, that such a critical state asset, a crucial entity like toll, you don't have to have private hands in there.
No, I mean, unfortunately, that's not the case. If you look at the paradigm shift in terms of our efforts to finance strategic investments, we have indicated that PPP is the way to go. We are going to do it in the road sector. We are doing it in almost every sector. In fact, even in the health social sector, that's what is happening. The National Health Insurance Scheme has enabled, strategic investments in healthcare infrastructure by private people who are providing the service and then getting paid gradually to recover their investment. So why should toll be an exception? I mean, relative to investing in education and investing in healthcare, why do we put a chunk of money in toll? If we can find strategic investors who definitely can be able to put in money, engineering know-how, and managerial experience brought to bear to make it more efficient and make it expand its capacity to service not just Ghana, but the entire West African sub-region. I think that is a very wise decision.
The managing director at Torampia says that the major problem really is lack of funding and breakdown of machines. Is it a case that governments can't find the money?
Government has been making an effort to find the money. Some of it has resulted into deficits, which all of you have issue with. Is that okay? And we're saying that we're going to change the approach to financing. We're going to bring in strategic partners who have money so that they partner with or expand the facilities, make sure that it is operational and efficient. We will definitely recover our percentage of investment in it by way of profit. If it is worth 1 billion and a strategic partner also brings another 1 billion, it is now worth 2 billion. Whatever profits are made from it, we take our percentage and the investor also takes his percentage. We may decide on controlling interest in terms of who controls, who has majority stake in it, and who therefore has more control in terms of management, etc. That can be discussed. But nobody doubts the fact that the global, the current trend, the paradigm is for such strategic investments to take place in partnership with those who have the resources and the money. So I am at a loss. There is no statement that we're going to sell Tor, which is the wrong message that is going out there. The government says they will sell Tor. The president didn't say Tor is going to be sold. He says that it is going to be restored to its former glory, and that's what we're doing by investing close to $60 million into it. Then we are looking at inviting strategic partners going forward. That's the approach.
I'll return to you shortly to find out if there are any timelines regarding how this process is going to be managed. But I'll move to Abdul Malik Kubako now. Now, there are some who suggest that, you know, Dr. Nkrumah will not be happy at all to see that this asset is given to private hands, or you allow private participation.
I will deal with that subsequently. But I have to deal with the ZACM thing. It's supposed to be the KTPP.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah. If you recall, in the wake of the Craig Murray controversy, ZACM issued a statement. I would want to read some portions and then establish the case with VRA's Volta River Authorities.
Okay. So let's do that briefly and then move on to the next subject.
It's important. It's good for this program. Integrity of what one says must always be brought to the fore. I won't read all, but the total, this is from SACEM. It says the total original contract value is 65.5 million euro. The approximate dollar equivalent is $91 million. Out of this amount, approximately $39.5 million has been paid to the contractor, that is ZACEM. I have evidence of some of the payments here. Release of funds for advance payment on the Pond Thermal Power Plant, signed by Kotosai, dated 6th March 2007. Now listen, to date, this progress includes A, mobilization, which is 100% complete. B, detailed engineering and design, which is 70% complete. C, temporary buildings and services, including all storage facilities and administration facilities for client and contractor. D, purchase of long lead items such as exhaust stacks, transformers, steel tanks, generator circuit breakers, etc. E, construction of concrete perimeter fence. F, construction of permanent roads. H, site clearance, earthworks, and evacuation for foundation construction. The overall progress to date stands at approximately 40%. In the first quarter of 2009, VRA informed the contractor that there was no funding to complete the project, and that until such time that funding was made available, the contractor was to suspend works. To date, the financing has yet to be secured to continue with this project. I don't recall VRA challenging this public statement, which even your own station used. It was a big controversy. Apart from that, I have here VRA's payments made to ZACEM International Construction Limited, 11th floor, June 24, 2009. All these are work performance form throughout, with all the work done and the payments effected by VRA itself. Here, you can read it.
We're talking about within which period? As in dates?
As in date, well, from this is June 2008.
Okay.
This up to 2009. This is dated. The overall document is dated June 24, 2009. You pay for nothing, for no work done. I'm not a technical man, but if you are going to put up a plant of that nature, it has different phases. So you cannot say nothing had been done till 2009. So why were we paying them? For what? And when this company issued this statement, public statement, the VRA was dead silent. Anyway, I'm sure this matter will come back to it.
Certainly.
Let me just say that I have listened to him. The communication that I have from the VRA communication director is to the effect that your statement that 40% of work done by 2009 was not accurate.
And that's what?
What he said was that, yes, they had procured some materials, but that
40%
of work had not been done.
There are two sides. Please hold on.
Let me finish. I listened to you.
Yes.
But you see, when you enumerate the things that you claim were done,
yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Site clearance, construction of fence or whatever perimeter wall, okay? That is not the power generation plant. You understand? So maybe what he's talking about is that the power generation plant itself, the work on it actually started last year. He admits he admits that
I have read to you a statement that was issued. Look, detailed engineering and designs are part and parcel of that construction. You cannot have the plant come sit there.
No,
but you see, you are being unfair.
Designing.
I heard recently your own Kwabena Donko tell, and he's an expert in that area, saying that when you want to put up these things, it takes 4 or 5 years because the designing, the construction, all those things are part of it. And that's why we were paying them. Okay? And I'm saying that this statement about 40% was made public. Let me read
the VRA communications.
You want to read it one more time?
I did not hear that.
Okay, let's read it. So we'll move on after that, yeah.
Kweku Bako's submission on the KTPP Armstrong project in Pong is fundamentally inaccurate. The project was not 40% done. In fact, materials came in, land acquired, but project construction never started until late last year. VRA Communications.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, so let's leave it. Let's leave it out.
I agree.
Okay.
And they were dead silent then.
All right.
And we had effected payment. They themselves have paid for hundreds and hundreds of invoices here. They were paid for no work done.
He said materials were brought in.
Okay.
I
think at this point,
detailed engineering and design, which is 70% complete, true or false.
Great.
So if this company was lying, why did the VRA keep quiet? And why were they effecting payments? Based on their own invoices.
That's why they are speaking today.
Okay.
Come off
that 40% was not.
That may be part of the problem we have in the public system. If you were effecting payments in these hundreds of invoices for doing nothing, what are we talking about here?
Okay, so now let's move on to Tor. Let's move on to Tor.
You were asking me what the Nkrumah would think. Back to Bataan. Look, listen. Tor, before it became Tor, was known as GAIP, Ghana Italian Petroleum Company. It was incorporated on December 12, 1960 as a private limited liability company, 100% Italian owned. That's its history. 2 Italian companies, Agip Petro Società and Anec Società, were the owners of GAIP. It was commissioned by Nkrumah indeed in 1963. In April 1977, they transferred, the 2 Italian companies, transferred all their shares to the Ghanaian government. So the Ghanaian government became the sole shareholder in April 1977. That's its history. Of course, 1994, we did expansion and modernization. That's the first phase. 1999, the second phase, which is the RFCC. Before then, Tor was just, importing the crude oil and refining it. No, GMPC was doing it and giving it to Tor for refining. And Tor, they will be paid some towing fees. These things changed, I think, mid-1996. As far as I'm concerned, a certain private, and I'm a left-wing minded person, so you would normally expect me to be opposed to any attempt to privatize or, even bring in private company. But I ask myself, and I'm going back to that thing, see, Memorandum of Understanding on Accelerated Privatization of Tor. This is Memorandum of Understanding, Divestiture of Tema Oil Refinery Tor. This is NDC-2 administration. Signed by Kwame Pepra. A memorandum of understanding between them and Samsung. When the NPP administration took over in 2001, they decided to pursue this particular policy. And they made challenge from Ayarega and his friends. Even though if you read this one signed by J.H. Mensah or Safamafu, and the same gentleman who signed with Pepra is the same gentleman who signed with J.H. Mensah and Osafamafu. J.H. Mensah and Osafamafu's memo, you read paragraph 2. It says the undersigned noted that a memorandum of understanding was signed on June 27, 2000 between the Ghanaian Minister of Finance and Samsung Corporation, which set forth the modalities and procedures for achieving privatization of TOR with the involvement of Samsung Corporation, whilst the MOU of June 27, 2000 envisaged certain critical steps that need to be taken by the government of Ghana to move forward with TOR's privatization, these steps were not taken. In order to accelerate TOR's privatization, the undersigned hereby agreed to proceed as follows. So this MOU of the MPP was in a way linking and accepting and seeking to proceed. Our friends opposed it, and it became a huge political controversy. What we are doing today, we are only recycling that same thing. And so, stalemate and project abandoned. And that the state alone should continue being the shareholder with all its financial burdens that accompany that exercise, leading to all those under recoveries and poor management skills and all the rest. I'm holding here a whole forensic audit into TOR from 1991 to 2000. And I'm sure my friends in the NDC3 administration have conducted some forensic audit also of TOR. Go and check. All the causes of TOR's woes are captured here, and I'm sure in the report that they have done, a copy of which I don't have yet. I'm yet to intercept. Okay, so what is it?
Will not intercept.
Oh, I would. I've still been intercepting documents.
But why would the Minister for Information be interested in keeping information?
Away.
They're not even embarrassed.
Indeed, you must
Why?
give me a
Give it out.
Listen,
so here we are.
Carefully. Listen carefully.
I said you will not intercept because we are now running an open government and you will get it.
Okay.
No, I see your point. You know, so to be honest with you, the woes of TOR are known, well documented, and can be dealt with. Some infusion of capital, either by the state on its own, is required, or joint venture.
Strategic partner.
I believe the state must hold a majority stake. That's my feeling. Management must be essentially Ghanaian. We have the expertise. But recapitalization of TOR, and indeed, because we now have oil, making sure they can refine our own oil, deal with more of the byproducts, this is the wrong time for anybody to suggest 100% privatization of TOR. I haven't heard it do, but I'm saying it's the wrong timing. The way forward is this. And then, of course, the private sector should be encouraged and given the opportunity to create and forge more refineries, private refineries, in addition to TOR. Competition will not kill
The question that's been asked again is that if private persons or private entities will be interested in TOR, it is, it is for profit. Don't governments want profit?
Yes, but that's why I'm saying that if you balance it, if you the right mix, government being majority shareholder and the private investor being a minority shareholder, it depends. I don't know the figures. I'm not sure about how to make the figures. Both sides can make profits.
All right. Now,
but we need independent refineries too, some extra refineries.
Okay. Now, before things became a lot more, public, we had an accusation from the minority through its leader when it presented the true message on the state of the nation, that government was scheming to sell TOR to its cronies.
Well, thank you, Samson. Just a quick point about this treasury interest rate.
Why are you interested in going back to that subject?
Ayaga was digging himself.
I think you should bring a banker to come and explain this.
Let me make the point quickly.
Bring a banker to come and explain this.
Let me make the point quickly, Samson. Listen, the government...
With the greatest of respect, you would do, and he would ask for a rebuttal, and we will continue.
I'm using my time.
No.
I'm using my time.
Let's move on to TOR. If it's possible, let's move on to TOR.
Move on.
Let's move on to TOR.
The government's own interest rate, which is a treasury bill, is 23%. So Ayaga should address himself to that.
Okay, move on to TOR.
This TOR thing, Samson, Mikuku's laid the situation there. It comes down to leadership. Far back as 2000, we were signing MOUs to do PPP with TOR. Ayaga is today trying to tell us that PPP is some new magic formula that he and John Mahama have brought. Way back 2000, we were signing PPP agreements on top. And then when the government exited, and the new government came and the new government wanted to continue, they said, hey, why? You see? So it's just the nature of our politics and also leadership.
But the accusation of the minority has been that government was scheming to sell it to its cronies.
Let me answer that directly before I go to my general point. If there's going to be a sale, and the sale is not going to be done above board, then don't do the sale at all. If there's going to be a sale, it has to be done above board. So if the minority is saying that this sale is not going to be above board and is going to be teleguided to cronies, it's an issue that the government will have to come and deal with to show the transparency so that everybody can be rest assured. But you see, something tall. When the NDC came, you remember, they said tall debts, huge debts. Depending on who you were speaking to, the figure was changing. Vice President Mahama gave a figure. Asaga gave a figure. President Mills gave a figure of the debt. Quickly, you remember those days, and we're running around that yes, NPP had brought so much debt to talk.
Is Goku the only person who can confirm this?
Because he has the documents. No.
This is mystery.
No.
Is there a partnership that I don't know?
No, because Kweku has the documents. You don't. You don't.
Why? I just brought you the budget. The most recent document you don't have. The most recent document.
When I didn't want to worry you, but you are bringing yourself. When you read the budget was not available.
Oh, I've just donated a new one.
It wasn't available. So. The whole government, you read the budget, wasn't available to anybody. So they ran around. It was debt. Mills will mention his. Everybody will mention his. I'll look into it because I'm sure even Ayariga, because you're a spokesman, I'm sure you also mentioned some figure. Eventually, they said they have paid the debt. Okay, let's not so much. The thing is that we should just find the money and pay the debt. So talk and run. So they gave us the impression that the major limitation was debt and that they had paid. It turned out that they went and borrowed money to pay. They raised bonds. Fine. They made so much noise about it. They appointed new management. Ampofu, who was one of their top oil spokespersons, was appointed. Then they brought Mr. Mpia, who was supposed to be management and all of that. As we speak, remember Professor Mills went there. The workers were angry that you've spoken so much. We don't see anything. Our eyes are red. And he told them that, yeah, me too. My eyes are red. You will see action. So that I was promising action and I read and paying debt and making noise and all of that. The tragedy, Samson, is that. What is this thing that you're wearing? Samson, the trouble is that Ghana, when we didn't have crude oil, we still managed to structure our arrangements in such a way that Tor was refining crude. We import the crude and add.
Pay attention. Pay attention.
No, but I cannot pay attention when his phone is getting all kinds of funny messages.
He'll work
He's got Ayariga.
You go on.
These Ayarigas, they have a track record.
Mahama Ayariga.
They have a track record of distracting you when they are making your points. So when we didn't have our own crude, we still were able to structure an arrangement where we would import crude, whether by GNPC or by TOR itself, and add value. When you add value, you save money in the country, and you provide jobs, and you provide expertise. So it's a tragedy that now that we have our own crude, and if you look at the lifting that Ghana government alone lifted, that's quite huge. That TOR is not working, and TOR is not able to refine our crude. And we have to export the crude in a raw material form and take money, add some to import finished products. It's a major tragedy. You see? So we are back to square one.
Okay.
Now, the thing about the privatization. You remember the NPP brought the toll recovery levy. Even the MD says that since 2010, that monies have not been paid. major indictment that the government hasn't responded. But you see the privatization. Hey, Kuku says he's left. Me, I'm right. I believe that the private sector is always more efficient than government.
Okay, thank you.
But
thank you.
No, my conclusion is that I also am a little cautious about selling major state assets to foreigners. If the sale can be structured in a way that there is significant Ghanaian participation, there are private sector operators in Ghana that, given the right support, can be able to raise finance to partner government.
Okay.
For me, that's my major.
And Koku's suggestion of a 70% stake by government should cure that also as well.
As for the privatizing it, look, Ghana Telecom.
Okay.
Once Ghana Telecom, it hadn't made a profit in 20 years. It was only last year or last 2 years that started making profit. But it was run by the state. Losses were being absorbed by the state. That's why we couldn't provide roads.
All right.
So me, I'm for privatization.
Let me take this quick reaction from you, Mama. Quickly, and let me get.
Well, I'm happy to listen to Nana Okomia, and I listened very attentively, and I did not hear him confirm that government is scheming to sell to its cronies. So clearly, he is saying that what his own minority leader. Why did you say that government is selling to? I'm asking you whether
your explanation was that
your explanation was that government just wants a transparent process.
That's all.
But you see, when the minority read that statement, they said government is scheming to sell to its cronies, and I think that I think that as politicians, we must perform our responsibilities and maintain certain standards.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Thank you.
To make that kind of accusation, when the only thing that has happened is for the president to indicate publicly that he intends to seek strategic partnership, I think is most unfortunate.
Now, Godwin,
let me move on.
Yes. Samson, you remember the workers of Tor themselves have come out publicly making this accusation.
Their concern was that the amount of money that was being sunk into Tor may be dissipated because of certain allegations that they made of plans to, sell it off to certain members.
Listen carefully. The point is this. The workers
have made that point.
The workers are concerned. Why are you putting so much money and then at the same time you are seeking strategic investors? But the answer is simple. Fine. What will the strategic investor do? We want to expand the industry. We want to make it a strategic refinery in the sub-region. We want to make it efficient and effective.
Okay.
You need more money to do that. And already we have challenges with the deficit. We have challenge with the deficit. We cannot continue to put in more money in that regard.
Now, Godwin,
but I think this is very important. But I listened. He spoke and I was hoping that he would confirm what his minority leader said.
I'm sure you have cleared that point.
Us selling it to our
now, Godwin,
but I'm happy that
the question also arises
about clearly that we are not selling to our cronies.
About the sincerity in such dealings with the politicians. One says, I intend to privatize this. I'm bringing in, gentlemen, I'm bringing in private investors. And then, depending on where you are at a particular point, there is opposition. From the documents that Kokubako referred us to, it is very obvious that this is not an MPP or NDC thing, but that all two parties have been committed to this particular path.
You need to understand the history of privatization to understand why sometimes these comments are made. If you take it from the early 1990s, when the wave of privatization was unleashed from Eastern Europe and even in Africa and even in our own country, there have been issues of these privatization transactions not being done transparently. Researchers have established that in some cases, state-owned entities have been sold to political and business colleagues. And at the very end of the day, the society does not get anything in terms of even the amount at which those entities are sold, and even in terms of the performance of those entities. So there is normally a certain history to some of these speculation. Now, in addition to that, if there is no information readily available, regarding how these transactions are being structured and conducted, people are forced to provoke officialdom to then come out. And one way of doing that is to throw out the allegation. So that if you have the accurate information, then let it come. But it's all part of the attempt by the society to ensure that whatever is being done to this national asset is being done first in a transparent manner, and then secondly in a manner in which there will be value for money. But really, I think that we should not have this sentimental, or if you wish, ideological opposition to privatization, because that whole institution itself, everybody agrees, is underpinned by efficiency.
But here you're talking about petrol, for example. You're talking about refining crude, and we know what happens when the prices of petroleum products go up.
Well,
so if the state has a stake, it is better able to protect the interest of the vulnerable in society, because we are told that our next door neighbors, Nigeria, are now interested in looking at this refinery thing and having it themselves.
I do not believe, want to believe that you are suggesting that when it comes to the production of those commodities, we don't require efficiency. If we do, then this argument may not be that strong. Why is it that the same general public, when they go to transact business with a public entity, they are ready and willing to pay, not the official fee, but more than the official fee, in order to get a service? Because they place a certain value on efficiency in terms of the speed at which they get a service rendered to them. So it is not the case that the society would not benefit when you have private participation, or when you have some other arrangement that will ensure efficiency. I think it is the contrary. So the only thing that we should be concerned with is the transparent manner.
There are situations also where the government has looked at certain factors and gone in rather to take a private entity onto itself. We're talking, for example, about VALCO.
Well,
the circumstances were a bit different.
Yes,
they were going, they offloaded it, was good that government took it, and then decided to do what we did next time round.
All right.
Then the last point I would want to make on this is, government normally operates on a certain basis, on the basis of equity, on the basis of social justice, and then those things. And then the moment you introduce those concepts into the management of an entity that should ordinarily operate along sound economic or commercial lines, then you generally dilute the whole process. And at the end of the day, you may not be getting the best out of it. Agreed, there are some services that by virtue of their nature should be under public control, either 100% or the majority. Right. But there are others that, because of their economic or commercial nature, we should allow private sector ideas to come in, but with government regulating the way they operate to ensure that the public is not shortchanged.
Newsfile is brought to you by the kindest courtesy sponsorship of Star Assurance, your solid partner. And Star Assurance has got great products for you in all their branches all over the country. Just call them on 0302-240-632 or visit their website www.starassurance.com and be treated to some of the very juicy packages that they have for you. Let's look at the another problem that is facing the country. We are currently having to endure water rationing. And then Hassan Ayaga declares to us that he attends the independence, celebration without the opportunity to wash down. Not his fault. But
he did have water.
But what is happening to this particular entity? Nana Kumi, I'll start with you. I'm sure you have followed the back and forth between E.T. Mensah and Kweku Boche. Kweku Boche suspects that this is witch hunt, that E.T. Mensah has a certain, a feeling that he, Kweku Botwe, is aligned to the NPP and so will sabotage government in this particular, sector, and so is seeking to get him out of the place. We are aware of some committees that were set up to investigate him for doing certain purchases or giving contracts without following due process, allegedly, and that there's been a bad blood between himself and the staff of the company. As many as 4 different committees were set up, and all of them appear to have pronounced him guilty, according to these committees that were set up by the minister. They pronounced him guilty, and I'll just read just a bit of the recommendation by the committee, and it says that, for example, recommendation number 1, that in view of the weak relationship between the acting managing director and board, which adversely affected the performance of the board, the acting managing director should be made to step aside. It was also recommended that he should be prosecuted for having violated the Public Procurement Act, because there were certain contracts that he gave out, and almost all these contracts, he was just, a CD shy from the threshold that he needed the board's approval, and that all of these were done deliberately. Now, Kweku Botwe, you must have heard him come to say the minister is speaking, excuse my French, nonsense.
Well, thank you. I wouldn't say that I have followed this matter extensively, except the aspect that have played out on radio, what the various actors have been saying, E.T. Mensah, the minister, and also Mr. Botwe, the acting managing director. And there are some strands that I have gotten from it. The bit about Kweku Botwe being NPP, I don't know. I think I've heard E.T. Mensah denying that he's made that categorical association. So I don't know how that can be proven. There are problems with our water sector, no doubt. Nobody is satisfied with water delivery. As I was coming home this morning, my taps were not running, for example, and this is a general problem. The situation seems to be getting worse. If you try to pay your water bill, for me, that's my biggest problem with water. Even when you want to pay the bill, you don't know where to pay it. You have to hustle. So when you want to give them money, it's difficult. Unlike electricity now, where because of the prepaid system, it's easier to pay, and they seem to have little shops all over the place. So water delivery has been a problem. But on this matter, there's obviously bad blood between the minister at that time, E.T. Mensah, and the managing director at that time, Mr. Botwe. There have been various committees set up by the minister. The managing director is saying that those committees have not been fair in their investigation. He has mentioned that, for example, they talked to him for less than an hour, and that they talked to him about Kwanyaku project. And he didn't see the interim report. And indeed, that seems to have been corroborated by the Deputy Minister, Madame Hannah Bisiu, who I've also heard saying that she also, even though she has also been the subject of the investigations, has not seen the interim report. Even though the allegations have been made that the report that's supposed to be interim has even got into the United Nations. So you don't know, what is true and what is not true. I think that where in a situation like this you have the protagonist, the minister, deputy minister, the managing director, all of them saying that there hasn't been fairness. This one is saying, well, 4 committees and they all say the same thing. This one is saying, no, you have you have influenced the committee, you have an agenda against me, and so on. There's need for fresh insights. I would wish that the president or the new minister institute another inquiry to try and reconcile and make sure that the issues that are being canvassed are dealt with, because water really is life.
Okay. Now, Godwin, if you have also been following all that has been going on about this, and I'm reading the summary, the executive summary of the investigations, and the recommendations say that he should be made to step aside, and for where he's been found to have conducted himself, in ways that are at variance with the law, he should be prosecuted. The question I'm asking is that these have been done for quite a period, and he's been sitting there. If indeed he's guilty of all the wrongs that he's accused of, what are we waiting for? And to now engage in a battle on the radio.
Taking it up from where he has left off, you are talking about a commodity that is very essential. Now, what that means with respect to your question then is that speed is of the essence. Speed is of the essence. But while you are at it in trying to be speedy, you also need to respect the basic rights of the persons involved. I mean, you don't see that because it's an important matter and because of that, you need to be speedy about it. You disregard certain basic safeguards which the individuals involved will be entitled to. I am sure the individuals are not, very much complaining about the problems that have been uncovered by these investigations any more than what they feel border on unfairness. And I think that is also important that we address. That we don't seek to address the issues by, creating some other class of problems on their own. But, the water, electricity, and then such related utilities have been suffering all this while. And the people who manage them, who manage their delivery, their production, and all of that, have also not shown the necessary seriousness that should have been shown and then attached to that.
We have always had to subsidize, as it were, their inefficiencies.
Well, so if you now want to introduce efficient management methods into that, are we then going to call for private-public partnership? Sometimes, getting them to pay your bills or even getting them to come and bill you so that you go and pay is a problem. And then at the same time, they complain you don't have the money.
Okay.
Where should the money come from?
Let me hear from Abdul Malik. You going through the executive summary. What do you make of all that's going on between the two?
Yes, this is my first time citing a copy of the executive summary, indeed, by courtesy of your station. But I've also, like Akomia said, monitored a few of the discussions on air. And yesterday in particular, I heard Mr. Yiti Mensah, Mr. Butwi, and Hannah Bisiu on Radio Gold in the morning. And I was struck by a statement that the former deputy minister for Works, Water Resources made. That's Hannah Bisiu. Apparently, she had been mentioned by a newspaper report as having attempted to slap, not slap physically, but in trying to interfere with the committee's work. It looks as if she said she didn't know much about the committee. She knew the minister wanted to set up a committee, but she didn't know when the committee started its work. She didn't know when they ended, and she hadn't seen the report. And I could sense a certain difference between her line and the substantive minister who was her boss, And so for me, I think we need to reinvestigate this matter. I believe this executive summary report or whatever it is can be useful material for any committee, but a brand new investigation is required. You see, it is not good enough to have a former minister and the chief executive of water. Is he current or is incumbent?
I think it's on leave.
He's on leave.
Yeah, he's on leave.
To have a banter on radio.
Yeah,
it's not very useful. Okay, and the answers are still out there. We don't know which is which. We need something in terms of transparency, accountability, and good governance. We need to focus. So we need a properly established independent inquiry into this matter. Otherwise, perhaps somebody should lodge a complaint with Sraj for Sraj to take a look at it. There are many other statutory bodies that can look at it. We shouldn't just allow this to be a radio debate. At this level and the kind of sector we are talking about. Radio debate, as much as it is useful for some of us, we like the sound bites, but it's not a prescription.
Okay. Yeah. Now Mr. Haga, I read to you a portion of the recommendation, and this is not the summary, this is the full report. And it says, breaking of contracts into smaller bits to avoid the threshold of the board is a breach of provisions of the Public Procurement Act 2003, Act 663. The acting managing director, for carrying out this practice, commits an offence, the penalty of which is a summary conviction to a fine not exceeding 1,000 penalty units, or a term of imprisonment not exceeding 5 years, or both. The law must be invoked. This is the recommendation, and then you come further to the other recommendation that says he should be made to step aside. Gathering that this report was made available in December, and he's still there, and we are running the discussion on radio. Nana Kumia has made a suggestion. I'm sure Godwin has also made a suggestion. Do you think that it is not necessary to have a second look at the situation and to get a conclusive, verdict on it?
Actually, I think that it would be inappropriate for me, in particular, to be commenting on this matter. In all fairness to all the parties involved, and in fairness to this senior public official involved, I don't think that as information minister, I want to sit on radio and discuss this matter. There's a new minister who has just been sworn in and is manning that post. I believe the new minister will look at it and take matters up from where the former minister left them. And I'm sure if he needs guidance, he has somebody higher up, the president, to consult, and then a decision will be taken. The matter should be dealt with through the appropriate channels and not on radio. So I will take note of all that, but I think that it will be prejudicial for me in particular to sit on radio and discuss this matter.
Okay, you're still listening and watching Newsfile on your Joy News channel on Multi-TV and also on Joy 99.7 FM. I think we can wrap up with the issue on the Isophoton judgment debt, with which we now know that by the instrumentality of the state and also Martin Amidu, it's been stated the Supreme Court has stopped the payment of the $1.3 million. I'll start with Abdul Malik briefly, if we can, take a brief bite before we get out.
I admire the consistency, the courage of conviction of Martin Amidu. I think that regardless of what people think of him, he's one star shining out there in terms of public accountability, transparency, and good governance. And I will encourage him to stay strong and focused and continue pursuing this line. It will help all of us. But I'm not a lawyer, and so I might even betray my ignorance somewhere along that line. But was the AG attempting to procure, quote unquote, a stay of execution?
Yes, they did so first at the trial court, high court, and it was refused. And often when it happens that way, you have to repeat it at the Court of Appeal. I understand that this is what went to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, but what happened at the Court of Appeal? For 9 months or so now, what was the AG doing? And trying to procure a stay of execution in Martin Amidu's case was part of the Martin Amidu's case at the Supreme Court. I found that a bit odd.
Okay, so
as a layman, I think there was an oddity there, and it appears that Martin then went and filed for this order to preserve the status quo.
Okay, so I think that by setting precedence and setting orderly conduct of the case, I think that this is the Martin Amidu one.
That's right.
That has prevailed.
Yes.
Including not only staying the payment, but all other proceedings in all other courts.
Precisely. So the Supreme Court did not even bother to deal with the AGs because the AGs was rendered redundant. I think there was a certain dubious aspect with the ages thing, I'll be honest with you. I'm not a lawyer, but I think it was funny. And I'm being charitable. I'm looking for a stronger word to use, to describe it. Perhaps, and I'm told that the counsel for the respondents, tried to argue with the Supreme Court in terms of the order of dealing with the issue. And the Supreme Court said that, look, we have the right to deal with our own things the way we want to. Because so they dealt with that and did not pronounce on the ages thing. If they had, we would have seen the extent of incompetence that informed the ages. And I'm not talking of the individual AG, I'm talking of the department. Okay, that's what I think, and that worries me. That level of ineptitude has informed most of the actions of the AG's department in all these judgment debt matters. It's been an Achilles heel in how matters have gone. And we have to be very careful. Okay? I've been talking to a few lawyers since last night to get education. And those good ones are telling me there was something wrong with the AG's approach. And in any case, the delay relative to what had happened at the Court of Appeal. So thumbs up to Martin that he moved fast to get his case done. It's like the person who is paid illegally or unconstitutionally paid some money, now going to ask the Supreme Court that give me an order that I shouldn't pay or I shouldn't receive. It's an oddity.
Now, Godwin, it's like granted that this is the if in the end Isophoton won, then you would expect that interest will accrue and all of that. So is it really progress that we should be celebrating? It sounds as if it's just a breather for government to now look at clearly how to go about this issue, isn't it?
I think you should be looking at the issues involved and not be speculating about whether government will be paying so much or not be paying so much. And I think there are fundamental issues involved. That is why Martin Amino has had to go that far. I mean, you can see the sense of conviction with which he has fought this particular issue. He believes that the entity did not have a valid contract. And he believes that there is no basis for any payment to be made. And we should be interested in establishing that allegation. You get the point? I mean, if it turns out to be that way, it's hard, fair enough. If it turns out that it didn't have, all well and good. But it's important for us to be certain that the entity had or didn't have. And then the rest could take care of themselves.
Nana?
See, well, Kweku was trying to mince words, but you cannot mince words in this matter. This judgment debts issue is one of the most dramatic examples of government corruption and inefficiency. And Amidu himself stated it, that you cannot
alleged corruption, you mean?
You cannot do some of the things that have been done if there was no grand collusion and collaboration. You cannot. You can't. Look at this Isophoton. You have a situation where the NDC came into office. They were faced with Isophoton. Government before the NDC had filed a case in court against Isophoton. The NDC said, let's take it from court and see if we can do a settlement. They did that. Then they went and contracted a group called a professional group, a group of lawyers, and said, please, study all the documents and advise us as we go into negotiation with Isophoton Company. They paid this professional group people $260,000. But before the professional group could bring the advice to the government had gone ahead and started paying money to Isophoton. I mean, is it inefficiency? I don't think so. It is collusion to defraud the state of Ghana. Otherwise, how do you explain it? Okay. And so all that monies that were paid to professional group is gone down the drain. When the matter was brought to the attention of the government, why have you paid money when you've contracted a professional group? They said, oh, we've already done it, so let's rather find some people and charge them. And all of this is on record. This is the situation that you have.
I see.
That is why we have the deficit. That's why we can't provide jobs for our people. These are the matters.
Mr. Ayaga, is it this simple, straightforward?
Well, I can understand Nana Akumia trying as hard as he can to politicize a matter that is more complex than perhaps a matter that is more. Yes, it has been dealt with at different levels.
Didn't you contract professionally?
The problem is being dealt with structurally. The president has appointed a sole commissioner to go broadly into the whole problem of judgment debts and then come out with recommendations regarding how to deal with that. But there are specific cases, and this is one specific case. The beauty of our legal system is that it provides room for citizens who are in doubt regarding the conduct of cases to get involved the way that Martin Hamidou has gotten involved and is pursuing his convictions. But let me indicate that what has happened clearly is normal in terms of the legal process. Very normal. I mean, there's some doubt about a payment, and then one party says, well, we don't lose much if we stop the payments and then wait till the end of the case. And then if it is established that the payment should be effected, then it will be effected. If it is established that the payment ought to have been effected and we stopped it, there's a price to pay. Is that okay? Let me finish. Let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish.
Have an effect.
Yes,
Let me finish
that point. Yeah.
Let me finish that. Yes. So it is normal. It's not an exceptional matter. It's not a determination of the substantive issues before the court. Like Gordon said, be interested in the substantive issues before the court. You
can get out of time by delay tactics, not dealing with the issues. You can lose it.
I'm not questioning all that. I'm not questioning all that. But I'm saying that these are normal things. These are normal things that happen in court. That is the decision to stay payment until the substantive matter is determined. It's a judgment that a judge has made on a given instance.
What stopped them from dealing with it at the Court of Appeal for 9 months? What stopped them? That shouldn't happen. That's the point I'm making.
Okay.
The point is that the point is that this whole judgment debt issue is being dealt with comprehensively.
At that one.
Yes, comprehensively by government. This is just one instance. It is important though, but as I'm saying, what the judges have decided to do is normal. Okay. So let's just wait and focus on the substantive issues and the outcome on those substantive issues.
Thank you very much.
It doesn't point to any grand
Let me share a few of the text messages that have also come in. Schiffman writes from Atonsu. It says, Kweku should not waste his energy on discussing economic growth because government has no solution to our current problem. The more we pressurize government, the more confused the president becomes and things get worse. Sonny Kwashi writes, what is wrong if TOR is privatized?
That kind of text message.
Okay.
The president is confused.
What is wrong if TOR is privatized? Let us ask ourselves how and why the OSA company collapsed. During the NPP's era, managing TOR was more than selling the TOR to cronies. What would the NPP have done if they find themselves in the current TOR situation? Give us solutions, not criticisms. Emmanuel Saba writes, I think Ghanaians will be appreciative and sympathetic with the minority if they give government alternative solutions to solve the country's problems, rather than their continual criticism and telling Ghanaians what the problems are. Paul Boateng writes from Brooklyn, New York, that if Ayaraga and the NDC believe public privatization is efficient for all sectors and TOR, then should the presidency also undergo public-private partnership because of whatever? Thank you very much for keeping your dials here on Joy 99.7 FM and also for watching us on Joy News Channel on Multi TV. This program was produced by a number of good guys out there, including John Appiah and Juliana York, led by Sedem Ofori. My guests on the show have been Mahama Ayariga, Godwin Adawine, Nana Komia, and Kweku Bako Jr. The show was brought to you by Star Assurance, your solid partner. Have a good afternoon. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming.